Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Engineering, Product, and TPM Talks. A special welcome to Technical Program Manager Talkers, Builders, and Doers. And this is the second part of our API design for X, formerly known as Twitter. In the previous part one, we looked at the functional and non-functional requirements. In this part, we're going to dive deeper into the system the the system design itself. Okay. Well, we like to start with a thought of the day, and today's thought is from the man himself, Niccolo Machiavelli, and he says the first method for estimating intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. And let's say men or women he has around him. Now, for a technical program manager, an engineer, or a product lead, I think this applies both ways. The first way is what programs are you running? And the second way is what programs are running you? I mean, as a technical program manager, a key skill is being able to work with people that are far smarter than you, who have the ability to do things that you can only dream about. And yet, you have to be able to harness their best to deliver value. If you don't know what I mean by that, inbox me for more discussions on how to do this. Um, but yeah, let me know your thoughts. Is is this how you will interpret the man himself's thought of the day, or does it mean something else to you? Okay, so who is this for? It's for TPMs, system engineering program managers, engineering leads, products type people. In the previous episode, we covered functional requirements, NFRs, supporting services. And right now, I want to jump right into the design decisions that will influence our Twitter API design. I've said this is for people who have interviews coming up, or people who just want to refresh their knowledge, right? A recent article that caught my eye was US employers cutting costs by um, axing internships, right? And also many companies have reduced hiring for white collar jobs. You know, again, inflation may be coming down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that hiring is going up. So my hope is that with these series of discussions, it's going to help you, sharpen your skill set, sharpen your knowledge and your tool sets. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to start talking about the different services, right? That's going to help with, you know, um, giving some clarity. So we said the tweet service, it stores up to 280 characters in a database. It coordinates with the timeline service to create up-to-date timelines. The timeline service, make that a little bit bigger. The timeline service, it will extract information on active users followed from the database to get their tweets and ranks them. It will combine tweets, trends, accounts, and adds into a single response. It's going to act as a distributed cache like think Redis for storing the timeline of active users, trends, and it's going to generate trends on the basis of user location, right? The PubSub service, the PubSub service will, notify end users of any activity that's happening. So remember, I said it's really for messaging notifications. For example, a new tweet from a celebrity that you're following, um, the PubSub service is responsible for presenting that. Something else that the PubSub service does is it decouples the tweet service from the timeline service. Okay, and I'll explain to you why. But at a TLDR level, it's just to enable asynchronous communication between them. The PubSub service will also help with recommendation. Okay, so you can recommend people based on that user's interest, etc. Then the ad service will recommend, text, images, or videos um, based on what you have previously liked or disliked. The API gateway here, which is just in between the clients and the services, is going to help you with routing traffic, right? So that's like a traffic hub to route traffic to different services or servers for the same service. Um, See it as a sort of load balancer. Don't quote me, don't crucify me. I'm not saying it's a load balancer. I say see it role as a kind of load balancer. Something else that the API gateway should do is it should also implement other functionalities like rate limiting, authentication, authorization, TLS connection, termination, etc. If you have any comments about this design, would you design Twitter differently? Let me know in the comments below. Happy to have that discussion. Let me know what you think I'm missing, what you think I should add. Yep. Okay. Okay. So now the next thing that I want to do is I want to look at the how the different components will interact. Yeah. So for the tweet service, right? What happens when a user posts a tweet? It goes to the tweet service through the API gateway. The tweet service stores the tweet's content in the database. In the case of a media file, it's a slightly nuanced interaction. What happens with the media file is that the client will first upload the media file to via the API request, via the API gateway, okay, to a tweet service which creates the tweet, and then it brings it back and includes the media ID, right? So let me just repeat that because I did not sound very clear. For a media file, the client first uploads that media file to a server, and then that media will have an ID, as an identifier, and then that identifier is going to be posted along with the tweet by the tweet service. So it calls it from the server. Okay. Then what happens is that the tweet service pushes a copy of that tweet to the pub sub service, right? So that's the publisher, subscribers, and service. And then the notification bit that I mentioned happens. There's a little bit more discussion on the tweet service. Let me get my slides up to date. So this is just a sequence that I just described. Goes from the tweets, the API gateway goes to the tweet service, goes to the persistence layer, goes to the API gateway, and then on the way back, goes to the PubSub service through the timeline service. Yeah. Okay. Pause a bit and let's go to timeline service. This is a little bit more complicated. It will work differently for active and inactive users because generating the timeline is slightly nuanced. Okay. So for the timeline service, just made it a little bit bigger. What you expect to see is, so for inactive users, right? There's really no point to generate the timeline immediately because the users may not log into the accounts for a long period of time. So it doesn't really make any sense to update the timeline on that need basis. Okay. For inactive users. For active users, it's a bit different because they're online. So the timeline service will generate the timeline beforehand in order to respond to the users in near real time. So it's what we call prefetching. Okay. So the timeline service will get the followers of a user from the database, extract all their tweets, score them based on the content that's relevant to that user or that customer. And then the timeline service will interact with trend, people discovery, and the ad services. And then what they do is they return different types of suggestions, see them as recommendation, like a recommendation engine, to store them in the feed cache. Okay. Then when the active user requests the timeline, the API gateway forwards the request to the timeline service. Let's see if Let me just go back. Okay, so quick question before I go. How does the timeline service handle timeline updates? Question again. How does the timeline service handle timeline updates? Nope, I didn't put the answer there. You can comment in the comment box below, but I'll just tell you. Typically, there are two methods to do this. There is typically the pull model, there's a push model, and then there are variations of in between. In the pull model, what happens is the service sends a request to the server after, say, a specific interval, just imagine every 500 milliseconds, and then it gets an updated timeline from that server. Okay? After another 500 milliseconds, we define an interval, it sends interval again. And as you can tell, it's not every time that something will be happening. Of course, depends on the number of people you follow. In the push model, which is another way, notifications will be sent to the client from the server whenever a new tweet is posted. So the server just pushes it out. When there's something available, it pushes it out. Okay. However, imagine a user that has millions of followers, like a politician, think Barack Obama or Donald Trump. Then that notification will be sent to millions of users, which is not necessarily an optimal approach. Now, since both methods have their drawback, what I suspect, and I don't work for Twitter, by the way, or X, what I suspect is they will implement a variation of the two, right? Because they both have their drawbacks. So what you probably see in reality is there'll be a mixture of both models. Okay. So, for example, let's say for someone that has millions of followers, what you could see is um, for the active, for those of their followers that are active, the push model will happen. They get the tweet instantly. Then for those that are inactive, nothing will happen until the pull model activates. Okay. So here, this is just a closer view of the timeline service from the API gateway service moving to the timeline, the cache, and other services. Okay. So to recap, in part one, we looked at functional requirements and non-functional requirements and supporting services. In this part, we are started to look at the design decisions. I won't say it's done yet. I won't say we're done yet because I've essentially split the design decision into two parts. Okay. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you feel this is relevant to you, like and subscribe. If you have any questions as to what I'm saying, obviously I can't go into every single nitty gritty, but I'm happy to. You can inbox me. You can let me know. I'm happy to go deeper or even up level. Okay. Let me know what you think. If this is how you would do the design, this is how you evaluate the difference, the timeline service and the Twitter service, sorry, the tweet service. Let me know.